Welcome to Scoop World Orders Wednesday. The summer is rolling along. It's discretionary week for the Buckeyes, but they're getting after it. Starting this week, they got some volunteer stuff. They are doing some testing. Summer's officially here. It's about to be a grind, but we have some huge expansion buzz coming our way, courtesy of the Oracle and Nevada Buck. That is always really interesting stuff to see how college football is going to look in a couple years. I mean, it's changing dramatically. Obviously, USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten is huge, but looks like there's some big dominoes that are about to fall. So we're going to get into that in a second. But as always, we're very thankful and grateful for you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. As always, we appreciate you guys joining us. If you enjoy this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, and also click that little alert button. We appreciate you guys, as always, joining us. Bring those questions. But we're going to get right into it. Nevada, I think in the last 5 to 8 years, we've seen more changing college football than in the previous 120 or so. What is the latest on expansion? There were TV times announced. It's still weird seeing CBS carrying the Indiana-Ohio State game that'll be at 3:30 in Bloomington, opening weekend of college football season. But what is the next domino that's going to fall? What is the buzz that you're hearing right now on expansion in the Big Ten and throughout college football?
Well, if you remember, we've talked about expansion a bunch, and again, I don't want to be on the self-congratulations thing, but like we had the USC UCLA stuff before anybody had it, and when that was kind of widely panned, that ideas like that would happen, and the same sources, the same people that are talking to me about that have kind of basically explained what's happening right now. Basically, what you've got is you've got a very aggressive Big 12 led by Commissioner Yormark, who is just a stone cold killer that's going out, and he's decided to make that into in his mind, he wants to make it a coast to coast premier basketball conference. And to that end, they've reached out to UConn, they've reached out to Gonzaga. You can understand kind of the implications of having a UConn on the East Coast, a Gonzaga on the West Coast, and kind of trying to grow that conference that way. The Big 12 knows it cannot compete at the level of the SEC or the Big Ten in terms of football, but doing that from basketball does make it interesting. And while it's not as lucrative as football, it definitely it kind of establishes that niche. It kind of goes out, and that also enables them to go out and grab some other schools, the Arizona, another basketball school, Colorado, trying to draw some other people into the Big 12. And most importantly for us, away from the Pac-12. And the Pac-12 now, the Big Ten does not want to be responsible for the Pac-12's demise. And it's not about gentlemen's agreements. It's not about being nice guys. It's not about being kind. It's about two words: tortious interference. They don't want to be seen as a person that's interfering with the existing contracts. They've already, kind of skirted that with USC and UCLA. They don't want to do it by completely gutting them with Oregon and Washington. But what's going to happen next is the Big 12 is going to poach at least two from the Pac-12. It's going to unwind things for the Pac-12. And at that point, Oregon and Washington are going to come to the Big 10. They're going to come on deals where they don't get as much as existing Big 10 members. They're going to be kind of staggered. They're going to take less, but even less in the Big 10 is probably twice as much as they'd get staying in the Pac-12. So those are the next dominoes to fall. That was a big mouthful. That was probably more than you were asking for, but that's the next step that's going to happen in football expansion.
But I mean, it's, when it's the goods, and when it's something that's compelling, and again, I always, if someone knows that they can't compete in a space, or it's a space that's non-existent, or it's a dead space, pivoting to something like a nationwide basketball conference, again, because the conference pride, like nationalism thing that was basically started by the SEC is real. And, these guys, like if you could have a dominant conference that has Gonzaga and it has UConn and it has all these really, powerhouse type schools that have rich tradition in basketball, I think it's genius. Because again, like, you're not going to beat the SEC in football. There's no chance. They have too much depth. They have too much going on in the South. They've got a lot of momentum. In the Big Ten, if you took Ohio State out of the Big Ten, then it would look like the Big 12, basically. You'd have like one, maybe one powerhouse a year, and that's kind of it. But, when you go that all basketball route, I think that's compelling. I think it's genius. I think that, like Gonzaga doesn't fit what the Big Ten wants to do with no football, but you add them to your conference for basketball, man, and they're a team that people like to root for. They're kind of in the middle of nowhere, and they've been number one overall type seeds. They've had a lot of success in the NBA draft. I think it's really compelling that they do that. But it's very interesting you talk about the torts interference, because that's something that is just something you just never hear about. You never see. It's just a whole different ball of wax, because you literally have some crazy stuff there. What's the timeline for the Big Ten, for the SEC, like for these schools to start jumping ship? And how do you see the ACC reacting? Like teams like Clemson, Miami, Florida State. Again, this is all, I think we've been talking about Florida State joining the Big Ten maybe for 15 years now, with the getting their AAU requirements up. But what do you see with the ACC and some of these other kind of, shiny gems like Clemson and Miami and Florida State that are floating out there, and people like the ACC is going to fall by the wayside as well.
Well, I mean, the timing on the Big 12 moves it's imminent. I mean, it could happen at any time. So don't be surprised when that gets announced. And then the Oregon Washington things could fall, immediately thereafter. The ACC is a little bit more difficult. We've talked about this before, and that all the ACC members have a thing called a grant of rights, where they've kind of basically given their rights to the conference, and the rights holder for their television broadcast is the conference. But there's talks about, every year that gets closer to the end of the GOR, the buyout on that gets less and less. And I think ultimately the ACC becomes a casualty as well. And I think you've got a few schools in the ACC that are logical members of the SEC, and I think you've got a couple of schools that are logical members of the Big Ten. And I think that's going to happen. And maybe the Big 12 picks up the pieces, and the basketball schools in the ACC kind of head to the Big 12. The football schools that identify with the SEC head to the SEC. That would be a Clemson. I think the schools that are more academically oriented, and Florida State's gone a long way towards increasing their academic stature. I know they've been kind of a punchline academically from a sports standpoint, but like you said, they've enhanced their AAU standing. They've enhanced their research capabilities. I think Florida State is definitely somebody that's on the docket, and certainly a target for the Big Ten. Along with North Carolina, along with Virginia, along with Georgia Tech potentially. So I think you've got some really interesting things that are going to happen. But the idea that you could have Arizona, Kansas, UConn, and Gonzaga all in one conference are in the Big 12. That's interesting, and that's an interesting twist. And I think Yormark's got a basketball background, and I think it's something that is really a unique way to approach a problem where you can't compete with the two big dogs in terms of the Big Ten in the SEC, but having a premier basketball conference that opens up some opportunities for the Big Ten as well. So lots of dominoes are going to fall. Like I said, the Big 12, Oregon, Washington things are short term. The ACC unwinding is a little bit more medium, longer term, but it's definitely going to happen.
How much, I'm sure there's been legal advice given to the Big Ten about how to avoid being sued by the Pac-12 by ripping their conference apart. But, how much of it, again, has to deal with, Kevin Warren, the tripwire with NBC giving them the Big Ten championship, a $40 million potential swing that the Big Ten's going to have to pay by doing it without Fox, doing it without Big Ten Network, who controls the rights. Do you think that conferences are going to be a little more cautious or a little bit more litigious, just because, again, these are like $billion deals that are getting done and unraveling, and TV contracts and schools that are getting kind of left behind. It's like the group of girls, and there's a couple pretty girls, and there's a bunch of average to below average girls. Like the pretty girls are leaving those girls behind. Like the Oregons and the Washingtons and the USCs and the UCLAs, they're leaving the rest of them behind. And, I think there's some jadedness, but there's also, hey guys, we had a conference, we had a TV deal on the table, you guys walked from it. How much is it just like the legal ramifications as to why you have to be delicate ripping a conference apart at this point.
Well, I think it's frankly it's the only play that the Pac-12 has left is kind of a litigation slash aggrieved party play because they're just getting picked dry right now, and they don't really have an alternative. I mean, their television deal right now without USC UCLA maybe 25 million a year, maybe 30 million a year. I mean, the Big Ten deal, 80, 90, 100 million a year. I mean, you're talking about deltas of 60, 70 million dollars a year for USC and UCLA. They figured over the first 15 years is almost $1 billion with a B was the difference between them staying in the Pac-12 and moving to the Big Ten, and that's a lot of money. So for the Pac-10 or Pac-12, whatever you want to call it, I think their only play is to try to litigate or threaten litigation to try to protect their remaining assets that they have because they just they got moved. First mover by the Big 12, first mover by the Big Ten. When you lose USC and UCLA from your conference, I mean, it's pretty much game over. It's like RIP Pac-12. You just don't have many moves left, and I think they're trying to do the best that they can. But this is what happens when you have a weak, commissioner. And for the Big Ten, getting rid of Warren was huge for them. Yeah, the mistake that they made by getting Fox was the rights holder along with the Big Ten in terms of the properties. So you couldn't just sell off the properties to somebody else without compensating Fox. And, this was really, really basic. And how Warren could do that and think that Fox was just going to walk away from, 40, $50 million was just a colossal misunderstanding. And, the guys that I talked to at Fox, which are friends that I talk to frequently, could not understand how it happened. And, they were happy to do it. They were happy to do it in terms of the concept of trying to make everything right for the Big Ten, but they weren't going to walk away from the money. They said, we'll walk away from the game, but you're going to pay us the money. And so what's happened? They get a $40 million, gift card for not broadcasting a game, and that's all on Warren.
That's just gross negligence and incompetence. But yeah, I think it's just it's amazing how teams at this juncture in college football can really flex their muscles. Like, I mean, if Ohio State and Michigan decided to band together and join the SEC, the Big Ten would be in the same shoes. And it's going to be interesting to see how much power they want to wield versus, because again, it's not all created equal when you're in a conference. Like they try to act like everything's equal, but it ain't equal. Like there's the stars of the show, there's the A side, and then there's the B, C, and D side, like in a boxing card. And Ohio State's always the A side. Michigan is the A side every time except when they play Ohio State. And when these groups decide to go to greener pastures, like USC and UCLA are geniuses for joining the Big Ten. Jumping into that TV deal, because again, like when you say numbers like 25 versus 85, 90 million, I mean, that's the difference between an athletic department running and going bankrupt, and even Ohio State with all the success they've had, they had to take out a loan from the rest of the university for $50 or $60 million to cover their operating losses from the 2020 year when we canceled the season, didn't allow fans in the stadium. We had all those idiotic, moronic things that we did during COVID. And then, we didn't even have enough money laying around to cover that. We had to go take a loan out from the university, from other parts of the university. So, and we fill the stadium and we have good attendance and we have expensive tickets. Like we're the 1% of the 1% in college football. The rest of these schools, they've got empty stadiums. You can look at a UCLA game, the stadium's completely empty. I think that the thing, for USC and UCLA, their biggest benefit is, you join the Big Ten, and when Indiana plays USC, that stadium's going to be filled with Indiana fans that want to go visit Los Angeles and hang out. And when they go to UCLA, they get to go see one of the most beautiful stadiums in the entire country and beautiful views. And and it'll be like that. Just go down the list. Go to Rutgers. Go to Wisconsin. Go to Purdue. It's like it's a destination. Like going to Los Angeles, it's fun. People go there for vacation. They go there to check it out. So that'll be a big shot in the arm for their attendance because it's kind of like when the Cleveland Browns play in Las Vegas and they play the Vegas Raiders. Like that stadium's gonna be Browns fans because they want to go to Vegas and party and kick it, and that's kind of the benefit that those two teams get. Because on the West Coast, those teams don't really support their schools the way that Big Ten fans do. Like, I mean, we have great attendance generally, as long as the teams are decent, especially like the upper two thirds. I mean, I feel like those fans are going to travel. They're going to go check out USC. They really would never have the opportunity to play a school like USC. If you're Indiana or you're Purdue, I mean, when are they going to play USC ever? You know, they don't want to do a home and home there because they don't want to come to West Lafayette. I mean, that's like the part of it. It's going to be really cool, and I'm super excited just to see a team like USC and their logo and their colors and the song girls and the pomp and circumstance playing in Bloomington and playing in West Lafayette and playing in East Lansing because they'd never come here in a million years except they joined this conference. So, Nevada, what are the things that you are most excited about? What's this expansion? I mean, I know I touched on a couple things there, but I love seeing new colors in new stadiums. And like I said, if the Big Ten doesn't get those two, then you never see those schools playing at some of the rinky-dink smaller Big Ten stadiums. So what are you excited about?
Well, I think look, the when you put this in conjunction with an expansion of the playoff, basically, what you're doing is you're adding more premier games to your schedule because again, USC or UCLA, that's a premier game any year you have it. And it's also with the expansion of the playoff, it basically then doesn't penalize you for having these premier games because you can afford to lose and not worry that your season's over when you do lose a game like that. So, if you add an Oregon, if you add a Washington, if you add a UCLA, if you add a USC, and then you sliding those into your schedule along with your other games where you've got, your Michigans and your Penn States and your Michigan States, and then heaven forbid you throw in a non-conference opponent that's worth a darn instead of, Furman or Citadel like the SEC does in Week 11, then your schedules just become unbelievable. So, again, as a fan, as a consumer of the product, as a suite holder at the stadium, everything just got more valuable because there's going to be more big games, more amazing games, and then you expand the playoffs. You have the potential of having a first round playoff game, maybe in the stadium. Maybe if Gene Smith has his way, it'll be at Lucas Oil or at Ford Field in Michigan or something like that. But more premier games in the stadium. More new teams coming in, more teams that you wouldn't ordinarily get. And like I said, as you rightfully pointed out, the Pac-12 schools normally don't sell out games. So when you add another 10, 20, 15, 20, 25,000 visiting fans from Indiana, from Ohio State, from Michigan State, from Wisconsin that come out to the Pac-12 thing, that's a huge revenue increase for them. And those make those fun games to watch as well. So I just think it's a win-win all the way around. USC and UCLA coming to the Big Ten is absolutely the biggest thing that's maybe ever happened to the conference. I mean, it's just an incredible ad. It's still kind of surreal that it's happened. I still got a kind of a pinch me moment when I think about it because it's just unbelievable that it happened. And as fans, we're going to be the benefactors because we're going to get to see more great games, and that's just a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, like you said, I think that and again, this isn't saying that like Midwestern people aren't transient and they're not flying all over the place, but when you give, say we do grab Oregon, we do grab Washington, when the Buckeyes play out there, those are nice trips. Those are parts of the country that generally, I mean, I would never go out there. I mean, I played at Washington in '07, and it's a beautiful part of the country. Like, I mean, it's a really scenic stadium. I know that a lot of our fans like to kind of go to the cool away games, like they go, a lot of people love to go down to Oklahoma, go to Virginia Tech, go to, go see these environments and these stadiums that you see on TV, every week, when they're playing a big game, like you'll watch a game at Virginia Tech or at Oklahoma or at, down in Dallas or whatever. But, when the Buckeyes are playing there, it's just that much cooler. Like, again, I know people will be excited to see Ohio State play SC again or play UCLA again out West. And, I think that's exciting. But again, like I just think of how that experience will build for like the smaller schools in the Big Ten that aren't as enticing to sign a home and home with because, again, like UCLA and UC, I mean, they're not signing up to play a home and home with Indiana or home and home with Purdue, a home and home with Michigan State, a home and home with Iowa because they don't want to go there. But now, like those fans will get to see him. And again, like you said, adding that marquee game where you've got SC coming to the Horseshoe, the same year Michigan's coming to the Horseshoe, it just makes it so much more fun for the fan base and for the players. Players get up to play. Like when I played Texas in '05 and '06, like those are the games that the fans talk about. They talk about it all year. It's even because it's even different than playing like a national championship game because I heard about that '05 Texas game from like '03 on, like leading into them coming to the shoe. And obviously, we lost that one, but then '06 we went down there and it was all about revenge and getting the dub. And I know after we lost to them in '05, I was the biggest Vince Young fan in the universe because I wanted him to dominate. I wanted him to win a national championship, and I wanted him to declare early because I knew we could be saying Colt McCoy as a freshman as opposed to Vince Young as a senior when we went down there in '06. So again, I'm not above rooting for an easier road to a win like we ended up pulling off. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a really exciting time for college football. I think it's going to be exciting just to see, like I said, the new colors and new places. Nevada, with recruiting, what is this going to do for our recruiting? Because again, we've already fought, we're going after Brandon Baker, the number one tackle in the country, is out at Matter Day. Like, what does it do? Is it a minor impact, a medium impact, a major impact? And does it help maybe not just Ohio State, but maybe some of the medium or smaller brands in the Big Ten with getting some West Coast kids?
Yeah, I think it's a medium impact. I mean, I think, Ohio State's always believed that, before this, that playing games down in Florida or down in, down in the South help them get the kids and develop those kind of those relationships down there and, get some of the kids out of Florida that kind of been a pipeline to Ohio State for years and years. And I would expect it would have a similar impact with Southern California. Ohio State is a national brand, but when you expand out there and you're playing every other year out there at USC, out there at UCLA, it's just going to expand Ohio State football to, Southern California, which is just a gigantic football market. I mean, when you look at the football markets in the country, and you're talking about Texas, Georgia, Florida, Ohio, Southern California, I mean, that's where it is. And
Mm-hmm.
we really haven't had much of a presence out here. And frankly, we haven't really grabbed that many players. We've grabbed the occasional player, but I think you'll see more and more players from Southern California head out to become Buckeyes as they get more exposed to Ohio State football. So I think it'll have an immediate, medium impact. And as you said, I think it's going to have a trickle effect to all the teams in the Big Ten, where you'll see more of those kids that are looking for kind of that more Midwestern type of football experience leave Southern California, where they would have ordinarily gone to an Arizona or gone to a Utah or gone up to Oregon or Washington. I think you'll start seeing them head to the Big Ten, for the obvious reasons that there's an immediate connection to the conference. So I think it's going to have a pronounced effect, and like I said, it's only going to be good for Ohio State football.
Yeah, and I also think that the kids are really cognizant if they have options of the conferences and as the Pac-12 degrades into being going from being like a top tier S tier type conference down to like a B-ish tier conference as they lose some of these gigantic programs. I think that there's kids that they want to play in the SEC or the Big Ten, and there was a time where when I played, I mean the Pac-10 was as good as because that was when SC was just crushing it. They're Leinart, Bush, Lendell White. I mean they were they had guys, they had mega dudes on that team, and so it had a lot more luster 15, 16 years ago than it does now. And I think that that's something that, I think kids, they're cognizant. There's different tiers. Like kids want to play in the SEC or the Big Ten, or the ACC is kind of still there. Big 12, obviously losing Oklahoma and Texas crushes them. The Pac-12 to me is just, it's just, I mean, they're losing their Oklahoma and Texas with the with UCLA and USC moving on. But, kids want to play in those big conferences, those big glamour games, better chance to make the playoffs, as the playoffs expand. That conference prestige thing was something that I thought a little bit about when I played, but it's even higher now just because of, the way the SEC is just kind of, I mean, the SEC to me is the most ingenious marketing machine there is because they've kind of galvanized their entire fan base to root for the SEC. Like the SEC just means more, like they're just great marketers. And, that's something that kids, they all say, oh, I played Vanderbilt and we went 2-10, but, Georgia won the national championship. So it's kind of like we won the national championship. And like, I never thought like that when I played football or any other sport. Like if Michigan State won the basketball title, I didn't feel like Ohio State won a basketball title, but that's just kind of how the SEC is. And And I think that kids parrot that. I think recruits parrot that. And, as the Pac-12 and Big 12 kind of fade off into the sunset, and the ACC, as you say, is in that medium stretch of getting pilfered. Pretty soon it's going to be the AFC and the NFC, and it's going to be the SEC and the Big Ten, and maybe one other conference forms from the remnants, and then it's going to be maybe a group between 1A and 1AA. What do you think give me a 5-year and a 10-year, you don't have to go crazy in detail, but what do you see college football looking like in 5 years? And then maybe if you project out 10 years, where are we going to be at?
Well, I mean, the Pac-12 is going to be this regional conference that, I mean, again, think about what they were before: USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington, Arizona. Like they stood for something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now they're going to fill those things with San Diego State, BYU, Utah State. I mean, like that's where you're going to have to go you're going to have to raid the Mountain West to fill the Pac-12, and they become kind of this regional West Coast outlet, and semi irrelevant to the college football landscape. You're going to have the Big 12 that's going to be a dominant basketball conference, and you're going to have the SEC and the Big 10. They're going to do 24 schools each that basically emulate the NFL in terms of almost like an AFC NFC type of setup, where you've got the winners of the SEC who plays the winner of the Big 10 for the national championship every year. And I think ultimately that's where that's the longer term. That's probably a 10, 15-year type of proposition. But over the next 5 to 10 years, I think the big story is going to be the unwinding of the ACC, and how how those teams kind of break out of the ACC, and where they end up, and how they get unwound from that GOR, and how aggressive the Big Ten is in terms of poaching them. And I think the good news is the new commissioner is pro expansion, and his hiring basically indicated to me that the Big Ten's not done with expansion, and that they're going to be more aggressive going forward in terms of their expansion plans. And again, as a fan, I love that, because that's just better for Ohio State from a consumer standpoint, and from a person who's just a fan of college football. It's better all the way around. So I think that's what's going to happen in the short, medium, and longer term.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that, when you've got a guy that really wants to get Boardwalk and Park Place and the 3 green properties, and it's a lot easier to win with those guys than it is with the purple with Baltic, and the purple ones. So, because again, some of these conferences, like you mentioned, you said it great with Boardwalk and Park Place and bringing in Baltic and the electric company, and that's tough. Like you're not going to have the same return. You're not going to have the same swagger. Again, it's the S tier top people taking off and heading towards a better conference, and it's just a total. It's a slap in the face of the conference. It basically, hey, that conference isn't good enough for us. We want to go join the Big Ten. And again, that's life in the big city, man. I mean, this is not for the faint of heart. Being a commissioner, negotiating these TV deals when there's all this money on the table, when you've got Amazon and Apple potentially getting into it, it's just an entirely different universe now. And I like you said, I love it. I mean, 3 years ago when there was no football to talk about, and there were no camps, we literally did an Xbox simulation called Scoop Dreams, where we put Ohio State in the SEC. So it was like, I mean, because we were talking so much about expansion 3 years ago, and then SC joins the Big Ten. So I mean, there's been all these rumors and everything percolating for a while now. Like I said, I feel like you've been doing stuff on SC to the Big Ten for 4 or 5 years now, and then it finally happened, and you broke it. We broke the whole thing, and it was just one of those incredible things where, it's like LeBron coming back to Cleveland or Urban Meyer coming to Ohio State. Like, you don't really believe that it's real until you actually see it and you read it, and you're like, oh my God, this actually really happened. And that was a wild one. Well, we'll wrap this thing, but this is a huge one. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of expansion stuff on our site. We got the Oracle, who's literally the foremost authority on expansion, really high up in college football, really knows his stuff. And we're never giving that guy up because he's really embedded in what's going on and breaking things. But any final thoughts of that as we go into the sunset on this expansion craziness podcast we just finished up?
Yeah, no, like I said, I wish that we could have the Oracle on. Oracle needs to maintain his anonymity at a
Yes, he
because he would.
does.
I think people would know immediately when they heard his voice. So yeah, I am not the Oracle. The Oracle is much
No.
more versed on the expansion stuff than but I know a little. I know a little bit. I know about 10%, but he's got the inside good. So if you want to check it out, I know he's got some stuff that he's going to be putting up here and actually going to have an all day chat here in the next couple of days on expansion as well. So good stuff going on.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. It's enthralling stuff. And again, thank you guys. I know we're a little earlier tonight, but we appreciate you guys tuning in. Again, the expansion stuff is just fascinating, and we've got that market cornered with the Oracle because he is really, really high up in college football, and he's in the middle of a lot of this craziness going on. So a lot of it is stuff on the chalkboard, on the grease board, moving parts, negotiations. So, but there's a lot of buzz and there's a lot of scuttle, and it's always fun to kind of talk about what he's allowed to talk about. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you for all you on BuckeyeScoop.com. We're coming up on a third birthday, so we're really excited about that. So thank you guys for being a part of our community. As always, if you enjoyed this content, please leave us a like, click subscribe, and also click that little alert bell if you enjoy this. Thank you, Sue, and all our regulars that are in here. Appreciate you guys so much. Again, this is a fantastic show tonight. But yeah, it's the expansion stuff it just never ceases to amaze me how crazy it is. So again, we're on that. Summer conditioning is cranking up. We got camp coverage. We got Bill Green coming, and it's gonna be a good one. So appreciate you guys as always. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation. Thank you, Scoop family. I'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a great one. I am heading to BuckeyeScoop.com. I suggest you guys need to subscribe there and join it there because it is crazy. We got a big Memorial Golf Thread tournament going, and you guys go down there, have a blast. It's always a fun time. It's one of the great weekends in Columbus, Ohio. So talk to you guys soon. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks.